Hi all, I have another amazing Blitz game to show you at the Super GM level, or Super GM level. Veselin Topalov against Magnus Carlsen. This is in the Grand Chateau Paris. Blitz section, 25th of June 2017. We have C4, C6. So Magnus is offering, actually, this is a variation of the Khan, an unusual one, but he's offering that. But white just goes into the Slav lines with d4. Knight f3, knight f6, e3, and now a slightly unusual move, a6 is played. This is fourth most popular, very interesting move. Quite often bishop f5 or e6 or bishop g4. a6, that's been played more than 2,000 times. Knight c3, e6, and you might think this is a little bit weird, putting all these pawns on light squares, but after b3, yeah, black's got a really solid position. This bishop can be a menace later quite often, believe it or not, even though it's temporarily imprisoned. We see bishop b4, bishop d2, knight bd7, bishop d3, castles, queen c2, queen e7, and now with the plan of e5, this bishop is going to see the light of day soon across this diagonal at the very least. White tries to put a stop to that with knight e5, because immediately on path is e4, of course, forking here. So yeah, put a break on that with knight e5, knight takes e5, d takes, knight g4. This is slightly compromised white, this whole sequence here. You might think, hold on a sec, isn't there bishop takes h7 in this position? Isn't this a bit strange? I'm not sure white has time for that. Let's just check this one out. So bishop takes h7, king h8. In fact, if, well, the bishop's trapped, isn't it? If we and lost to queen h4 here for a start, if there's f4. And if the bishop goes back, this is actually quite good because a center pawn has been won at the cost of a flank pawn, and black's king safety is not that compromised here. This is okay for black. So white maintains his center pawn. He's not attracted to that. He just wants to maintain that center pawn. We have f5 blunting now the diagonal, protecting h7. I'm not sure it's in white's favor to take here. This is fine. And again, we've got the idea of maybe e5 immediately, or taking and then e5, assuming b takes. So okay, that pawn's just left there. It's not taken en passant. We have g3. Why g3? That is an interesting question. Maybe g3 might not have been strictly necessary here. Maybe a move like this is interesting. Okay, but we have g3. Sometimes that diagonal, I guess, if the king's left for a moment long in the center, it could be dangerous. Now rook d8, and there is a concern here about this d file. If white can't castle queenside just yet, by the way, he kicks the knight actually, which is justification for g3 blocking the knight, because then queen h4 would be terrible. If he doesn't, if he castles queenside and doesn't kick the knight, I believe the knight can just go into f2. Yeah, this is great for black. So white kicks this knight here, knowing that queen h4. He's ruled out queen h4. So there's method in the madness of g3. But knight takes e3 has been permitted. Temporary piece sack. Black's getting the piece back. And you could argue that white's position, although technically equal, white's position has a feeling it's slightly overextended. Now this bishop issue, you might think all this madness with all the pawns on light squares, it's kind of addressed now with c5, clearing out this diagonal, and after castling b6, so this bishop is seeing the light of day on this diagonal. g4 now. Maybe this is a bit too much. Maybe preparation for that with hg1, and this position, maybe this is more prudent to wait on g4, because what happens here actually, I have to say it's a little bit it's a little bit hijacky. G4, it permits black to kind of hijack some of the weaknesses. After bishop b7, rook h g1 is played. The more cautious rook hf1 might already be needed for white to fight for a good, to maintain a good position like this, for example. This kind of scenario with king takes not losing f4 should be equal, but in the game continuation we have the less cautious rook hg1. Yeah, of course white wants to break through, and this kind of move now maybe takes Topalov by surprise. It's kind of pinning that pawn to f4. It's unpleasant to say the least if that f5 is taken here. If takes, queen takes f4 check, e takes f5, and it's not easy to get rid of this irritation, this really irritating queen, because say rook d f1 check, and that queen's a right pain. After say rook d4 here, how do we get rid of the queen? It's really irritating, and this shuts down this diagonal, so e6 is less menacing. And yeah, black's getting control of the position. You can't even take an f5 because of g1. Black's actually clearly better here. So this is what I mean. This is a bit of exploiting white's weaknesses a bit now. Bishop c2 is played. Rook takes, bishop takes, and the queen is really irritating, forking now the rook and the pawn. It's horrible that white's collapse seems imminent because of that f4 weakness. You'd think all the excitement with white opening up the g file, but in fact black, with his pieces barely out of the box here, or the bishop's now on a really good diagonal compared to earlier, but black with the queen is really harassing white. And after queen g3, white is groveling basically for a draw here. After queen takes, he has to defend queen a1, so he's hoping for a repetition here. After queen c3, queen f2, maybe hoping for a repetition, but Magnus improves now. The damage has been done here. He's snapped up a pawn, and he wants to expose the king. So guess what black plays in this position? If I give you 5 seconds starting from now, black to play. Okay, queen d4, yeah, to harass the king like this. You might think, hold on a sec, isn't there king b1 here to stop queen a1? Let's quickly check that. This is horrible actually for white in all variations now. King b1, we play the check, and if here white ends up getting mated, yeah, queen d2 check, and this is a forced mate in 3. Yeah. And yeah, there's not much to do there. If bishop c2, this is also horrible after queen d2. Say rook c1, there's rook d8, and the threat here is rook d3 actually. Yeah, that's a really nasty threat. And if takes again, rook d3 is now threatened. So this is totally diabolical for white in this position. So it seems queen d4, yeah, king b1's no good after bishop e4 simply. Yeah, there's just nothing good here it seems. The queen and bishop are working very well on the light and dark squares for the attack there. So we have g takes f5, but this is horrible now. The king is just being kicked to death after the check. Rook d8 check, queen b2 check, game ends here. For a start, if here queen d2, let's get that one out of the way, that's checkmate in 1. If here, then that's a checkmate in 4 of the check. Queen takes d1, and if king f2, rook d2 check, and that's mating. It's all very easily mating. You can see that all of 3 of black's pieces are just killing the white king here. That's unpalatable as well, of course. Just rook takes d1, white's going to give up the queen. So yeah, the game ended here. What can we say about this game? Visually, even though technically it seemed equal at one point, it seemed as though white was having to be a bit more careful. White seemed to have a more unstable position, fundamentally, prone to weaknesses, and that was fully tapped into and underlined with that move Queen H4. The F4 pawn was like the early Achilles heel over here, and it just led to White's downfall. Yeah, Magnus really found the downside of White's position, which was that F4. The queen invasion was just devastating. The rook on A8 didn't need to do anything. It was this bishop supporting the queen, which made sure there was no way of repulsing the queen. And it did so much damage in this game. It's remarkable, really. These games to study from a Blitz perspective, if nothing else. Hope you enjoyed it. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.